Hello and welcome back to another Polyapp tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to talk about reporting, which means different things to different people. But in Polyapp, reporting means one of three basic concepts. One is to view, create, update, search, or filter tables of data. Another type of reporting is to create charts. And finally, we have some reporting that has to do with exporting data for use in another program. So a good example of that would be you export your data as a CSV file, and then you use it in Excel to generate some sort of chart. All right, in Polyapp, you can report on anything that's a task. As you should know from a previous tutorial, everything in Polyapp is a task, so that means that you can report on everything. All right, so first let's look at tables. So because everything in Polyapp is a task, you're going to have to use a task in order to create your report. And if we search for table, we see there is a create table from data task. So we're then confronted with this form, which is a lot of required fields. And long story short, you just have to fill out this form. So let's say we want to report on this test task for task tutorial, which is quite the mouthful. And it is stored in the domain test. And let's call this report and now what we have to do is hit done, and we will get our first table. So this table contains all of the data because we don't have any filters associated with it. I'm going to make this full screen, and we can see that there are a bunch of different options for taking the data and exporting it. There's also some help for the table, and you can search through the table for different things that match your search query. Tables are not that complicated. You can play around with this and learn how to sort and do other things with the table, change the number of records you're seeing. But one of the key things with the table in any report is understanding how filters work. So one of the most common requests I'll see for a table is removing done timestamps or load timestamps. These are metadata fields which are added by Polyapp, and you probably don't want to see them in your report. So we're going to go to edit report. And so actually, I really recommend when you're editing your report, you have both the report up and you have the task which can edit your report for you up. All right, so let's add some hidden columns here. You're going to have to carefully type exactly the column name. Let's also hide done. Let's just hit done here. And we can actually refresh this page. We can see all of those columns were hidden. Let's actually edit this task. Let's add a time field so that you can see what I'm talking about. Let's hit done here. Let's create some data. And let's set it to the 10th. Oh, saving. Okay. And let's add another example here. Let's set it on the 20th. Okay, now if we were to run the current report, we'd see these new entries. We can also see the time field. What we might want to do, let me just refresh this. What we might want to do is view a report for time within a certain time period. So for instance, this week would include, let's do last week, would include the 10th, I believe. Let me check my calendar. Okay, last week, Monday through Sunday, would go from the 5th to the 11th, so that would include the 10th. Okay, and we need to specify the time field, which I named time field. Let's hit done here. You can see we filtered out both the time field value that had no value, and it's also filtered out the 20th because it was not within the relative time range we specified. So this is based upon the time that you're running your report. You could also add a second time range filter, which we would filter on that same field. And because it's an AND operation, it has to pass through all of the filters, and the 7/10/2021 record does not pass through the filter that limits it to being between the 20th and the 30th of December of 2020, you can see that that record was filtered out because I added this additional filter. Honestly, that's the basics of reports. The main thing that I like to use these sorts of reports for is getting a view of what people worked on. And that's why we have this user time filter, so that I can see, this task was completed 10 times within a certain time period. And then I can see, exactly what was entered into that task. And you can even go and open that task's data and potentially see more information about it. And of course, you can also use this to export to Excel and then to make a chart. But that leads into the next point, which is you can use our own chart task in order to make a chart. So I'm going to go back to the home page, and I'm going to type in chart here. I'm going to use create chart from data. I'm going to make a new chart. And I'm just going to copy most of this information over. And charts are kind of interesting because we have to choose a particular field on which to make the chart. Charts typically show you something like a line graph or a bar graph that works really well for instance, number fields. But sometimes you also want something like a pie chart or a donut, which is going to show you all the different things which were entered into that field. You might get an idea for instance, a select field. How many times have people chosen option 1 versus not chosen anything? So that's what I'm going to actually make a chart of. The description. And I'm going to display response frequency because I want to know how many times they chose option 1 versus option 2. And then let's look at our chart. So we can see twice option 1 was chosen and once there was no response. could even add another data here. And if we were to look at the report right now, it would not include that new data. But if we come back and we hit done again, it will rerun the report. And now we can see option 2 is once, option 1 is twice, and no option was once. That's pretty much all there is to creating charts. You also have access to these filters, which you'll notice are identical to the filters you have access to when creating a table. And they work exactly the same way. If you have any questions about how to make these tables or how to make these charts, I think it's best to send us an email at support@polyapp.tech where you sort of write out what your issue is. But there are also other contact methods you may have available if you're a supported customer, or you could leave an issue on GitLab and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. All right, thanks for learning about reporting in Polyapp and about what you can do with tables and charts.